Thank you for everyone to be here. For our guests, we're glad to have you. We'll have an opportunity for you a little bit later if you'd like to make public comment. Looking at the agenda, everyone sees what your responsibilities are for District 5 is covering invocation, pledge to the flag. We'll have approval of the minutes. Under announcements, we would like to offer our condolences to Brian Crook for the loss of his father. There is a call meeting with Enbridge on March the 7th, which means in order to do that, we possibly would need to move the executive committee meeting and the public works committee meeting to the 9th. Does anybody have a conflict in possibly doing that? If we accommodate Enbridge, which we'd be glad to do on the 7th. Everyone okay with moving those two meetings to the 9th?
What time was that?
It's on March 7th. What time in the evening? What time in the evening?
Oh, we can set it at 6 or 7, whatever pleasure.
6 or 7? 6?
6 works fine.
6 is fine. Okay. At that time on Monday night, we'll have citizens' response to agenda items. I'll give the mayor's report. We'll have committee reports, acknowledgements, appointments. At this time, for the next meeting, we will not on Monday night have appointments to the Board of Zoning Appeals. We won't have that issue covered yet. So we'll not consider that issue on at commission meeting. Under resolutions, anyone want to speak to this first one, resolution 20.2303.772? Okay. Commissioner Ford.
I read this resolution and it floored me because I hate to see history turn around and repeat itself. Many of you know what Columbia Gulfin is. That was supposed to be in Brownsville County. At the time, we had a county executive in our county, sold story on it, and fought against that. They got tired of fooling with them, so they moved right across the line and Macon County accepted that. And I hate to see us go on record and saying, well, we don't want it up there, we got a better place for it. Knowing PBA, they probably working with them anyway, but I don't want to kick the ball around a little bit and wind up losing what, can you imagine what would happen if that pipeline had stayed in Macon County or in Brownsville County? Can you imagine where we'd be today financially and what we could do with that money that was generated? Gentlemen that represent these people come to Rotary, I think it's 2 weeks ago, could be 3 weeks ago. And he talked about generating about $2.5 million for Brownsville County. I don't know how y'all feel about that. I don't want to be one to go on record as telling them people, no, we don't want it there. We got a better place for it than we may have. But they got a reason for what we put it up there, and it wouldn't come to us like that. So I'm just saying, folks, we need to be careful how we handle that thing and not wind up in Smith County. And it very well could.
Any other comment, Commissioner Gregory?
I completely agree with Mr. Ford. I looked up on the Macon Trustees website just the last 5 years. That Columbia Gulf, they paid over $500,000 to Macon County. That's just in 5 years, and this thing was put in what, 50?
Oh, about 65 or 70 years ago.
Yeah, just imagine the amount of money. This is that 2.5 million. Mr. Ford mentioned, that's for what they told us. That's not a one-time. That's annual. That's yearly. That's yearly.
Annual, yeah.
If you want to shoot a $2.5 million bullet in your foot, you're out of your mind, in my opinion. So, I'm with Mr. Ford. I think we absolutely would be fools to tell them that no.
This,
Excuse me.
I agree with them, and also that bunch turned down Ball State being built in this county too. Now look what that would have done.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Atwood.
this is just us asking them to use the approved site that they already have, which is the alternative site We're not asking them to move it somewhere else. We're just asking them to consider utilizing the other site. The county would still get the income from it. I mean, if you listen to the people in the area, which yes, this is in my area. And there are people in my area that are in this building right now. And, you know, it's gonna be right in some of them's back doors, brand new homes. That is our concern. I mean, we're just asking for them to look at possibly using the other site.
Any other comments? Yes, sir.
Oh, I understand back doors, and as you're saying, there's gonna be somebody else's back door, either place you're gonna put something, it's gonna be somebody else's back door. I think we need to be careful, I said this in executive, we need to be careful that I agree with Mr. Ford, is to the side that we don't ask an entity, and be too difficult on an item that has good benefit for the people of Travis County, even though maybe it's somebody's back door. You know, right now, Travis County relies heavily on property tax. That's where our tax comes in. It's an opportunity for some tax revenue, some revenue to come to this county in a different piece. I understand that this is an entity, Embridge, that doesn't, it's trying to supply gas to TVA. I think Sac City is on TVA, is that correct? So I don't know about you, but sometimes I don't know that entities are gonna wanna set on the same ground of the entity they're selling their fuel to. That might create some difficulty for them, so if we're asking them to not play here, and I know it's just an ask, honestly, all it is. But I think we want to be careful there, would be my thoughts.
Yes, sir.
So another aspect of this that I haven't heard mentioned yet is when you look at the Bratton Farm as property, which we really need to be considering. As we've had all these rezonings come through and you've got all this A1 going to R1, we're becoming less agricultural, more residential, more densely populated. What is the best use for that land for Trousdale County? Because either site, A or B, to my understanding, are both in Trousdale County. One doesn't change funding to Trousdale County one way or the other. But that is prime residential property if a developer wanted to come in and make a nice subdivision there. You've got access to sewer from two different directions. You've got water that runs through there on at least three sides. That's prime property there for residential or rooftops. And you're right, we get most of our property taxes, or what brings our revenue in. So why not do both? Why not have prime developable land there and have Embridge having their facility at their site C? So you get the best of both worlds and you get the most amount of bang for the buck. At the same time, this is why we need to be looking when we're doing these things as a whole for the county. Are we going to put industrial in the middle of a residential / agricultural area? That's not zoned that way. It's a utility, so we don't have much choice on it for that matter. We can politely ask. And that's about all we can do. I just like that to be considered.
Any other discussion on this resolution?
Yeah. I understand money is money, we need it to operate. People that are moving here because it's a rural farming community. You keep cutting these farms up, throwing houses on them. One day when there's nothing but houses, what attracts people to come here? Nothing. That's just the way I feel about it.
Anyone else?
I just think the biggest concern in that area out there they talk about is noise. Is anybody here, I mean, what kind of noise is it gonna create out there if I did that? I mean, is it like a jet engine all the time, or is it was there 5 hours a day, or? That's my biggest question I have. I mean, what kind of noise is it gonna take out?
And I think before the evening's over, we'll ask for public comment and hopefully we can have that addressed. Any other comments on this resolution? I appreciate everyone's input. Let's move to resolution 2023-04773, the authorizing of a private consulting contract. Commissioner Thomas, would you address this, please, before the
Yes, sir. This is
Commission.
a resolution just giving the mayor the authority to sign a contract with Mr. Rick Gregory. To do a combination and cleaning up of our zoning ordinance. They have not been touched since they were adopted for the charter. And the way they were adopted, they just took the existing and said, okay, these are now the zoning for Metro. So this would help clean those up, combine them into one document. Help some confusion with some of the zoning criteria right now, difference between your rural and your urban. Mr. Gregory has a history with working with the zoning regulations in Toronto County. He was our representative from GNRC for several years. Matter of fact, when he met with Jack and I, he still has his book with all the ordinances in it. And has them all dog-eared, tagged, any, things that we ran into. He already has all that information in place of things that need to be addressed. The money for this is coming from funds from GNRC. It is not coming from the GNRC contracts that are active. This is a dormant contract for the master plan that was done back in 21. There was a little bit of startup, a couple of meetings that was done on that contract, and then GNRC just dropped the ball and hasn't given us anything from that since. So that money's just sitting there in the line item, just waiting to be used for something. Instead of having GNRC do this, since we haven't had much luck getting them doing anything beyond their contract, we went out to Mr. Gregory for this information and for this help. The 11,000 is meant to be a cap. His rate's $75 an hour. He said with his familiarity with it and his experience, it shouldn't eat up near that amount. But we didn't want to leave an open-ended contract. We wanted to have something that was kind of finite so that for budgetary issues, it would be easier to address.
Any questions on that resolution? Anyone? Not, we'll go to, thank you. We'll go to resolution 2023-05774, EMS billing waiver policy. Commissioner Overman, would you address that, please?
Yes, this is just changing their, the way they write things off. The EMS has written off $112,000 this fiscal year, not counting their, insurance contractual write-offs. And this is just providing some more oversight in their write-offs, through the EMS committee.
Any questions? If not, we'll move along to resolution 20. I'm sorry.
One question on this one. I know that we have an ordinance in place. Does this need to stay a resolution, or do we need to change this to an ordinance? To change the existing one?
It's previously done by resolution, I believe. It was amended that previous resolution.
Yes.
And so, we talked about that a little bit, and right now, I believe it's gonna be okay as it is. And so I would certainly think that we can do it by resolution, amend that form, of course. The mayor is over that department, and so the duties and oversight of that is gonna be directly aligned. So it can be handled another way too.
Commissioner Preston, do you have a question? Or
No.
Oh, okay, okay. Resolution 2023-06775, EDC road names will be discussed. Any questions on that? I think we're naming 2 new roads.
Will you be county adopted roads?
I'm sorry,
These county adopted roads?
I don't know.
These are for emergency purposes. They are not county maintained roads.
Emergency purposes.
In case I have much.
Moving along to ordinances. We have an entire list there. I asked the county attorney if you want to allow one public hearing on these to address those in the
Public hearings, so that's right, the ones on the second.
Okay.
Commissioner McCollum,
Yes,
can I speak on this first ordinance on Mr. Doe? property.
This on 2023-01, 264.
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
When we had voted on this one last month, I had mentioned that there could possibly be a well on that property. Mr. Goat has came to me and he did find that there is somewhat of a well or a sinkhole of some sort on there. He has reached out to a company that deals with that type of things and they are looking into how that they can build this so it can still be a buildable lot without any question of that. I just wanted everyone to know that because that was a big question.
Any other questions about that one? Anybody? We'll move to ordinance 265, 2023-02, the rezoning of from A1 to R1 on Rankin Road. Anyone here to speak to that or any questions? To be second reading. I'm sorry,
We can speak if needed. Miss Patty.
do we want to hold that till later or do it now? Is that okay?
If the commissioners have any questions on it, we can bring that up, but otherwise it's public hearing for next Monday.
Okay. So, can she speak?
If she wants to, leave it open for it.
You can, we'll leave it open at the end for you to address that, Rachel. Okay. Moving on to number 3, ordinance 266, 202303, rezoning A1 to R1 Honeysuckle Road. Anybody have any questions about that? This is again, second reading. They've all been explained in the past. The next 2 ordinances are defining solar energy facilities. There's been some discussion on that in the past. Would anyone like to speak to that tonight? If you'll recall, it's on properties that would require 10 acres or more solar panels. Any questions? Okay. Ordinance 269, 202306, planning and zoning application fee schedule. Commissioner Thomas, do you want to address this from one of
This is the same thing that we voted on last month. I would like on, as it comes up this time, it has been brought to my attention, talking with Sam, that the way this is written, we have it going into effect as soon as it passes, but we haven't approved any funds to purchase the signs, and we haven't really settled on a design for those signs, what they should look like. So I would like to, as this goes forward, just to be able to, and Mr. Beller, you might be able to help me with this answer. I'd like to make a motion when the time comes that we amend this to set it where it will start as of the end of April.
Effective amended, you're asking to amend the ordinance with an effective date.
Yes, that would give us time to get through budget and finance to get a budget and get everything put in place. You can't really enforce something if you don't have the signs to provide for them, is the thought that's kind of being discussed.
Any questions?
We can make that change on second reading. We don't have to take it up again.
That's what I was just
Right,
asking.
correct, okay. All right, I thought that was to make sure.
Ordinance 270, 2023-07 to amend zoning. Is that a resolution for travel land use definitions? Anybody have any questions on that? Again, it's the second reading. Ordinance 271, 2023-08, amending zoning ordinance parts for land use definitions again. Any question?
I had a question. Are we still on 270, 2307? Yeah, we moved down. Yeah, okay.
You want to go back to number 7 for a second? I see no reason why we can't. Your question?
I'm just not exactly sure what this is.
Commissioner Thomas, would you?
Yeah, so. On seven, that's the, your interpretation for it. So that's your list of your different zones and what can go in those different numbers.
Oh.
Yes. And you've got two of those, one for the county ordinance and one for the old city ordinances.
Is that good? Go to number 8. Any questions? Or 271-2023-08. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, one comment, once we're able, if we are able to get Mr. Gregory to combine and clean up our ordinances, we won't be having to do 2 ordinances anymore. You'll do 1 ordinance and it'll suffice for all zoning.
Okay,
There's another benefit to that being done.
thank you. Okay, we come to first reading on 3 ordinances. The first one is ordinance 272-2023-09. Rezoning from A1 to R1 on Hawkins Branch. Ms. Rosalie, do you want to give us some information on that, please?
Certainly. This is property that is owned by William Ferguson, and if you look at the map that's included in your packet, you'll see that there is an R1 property right next door to the A1 there, and what I'm asking you to do is to rezone this long strip of A1 to R1 to match the property that he owns adjacent to this. So it's 2 R1 properties. And he's not looking to combine it, just to rezone this to R1.
Any questions?
It did come out of planning with a favorable approval.
It did indeed. Ordinance 273-2023-10, rezoning A1 to R1 on Ladder Reach Road. Ms. Rosalie, can you tell us about that one, please?
Yes. Again, if you look at the map, you'll see that this property is surrounded by property that's zoned A1 and R2 and R1. What we would like to do, this property does already have 1 living structure on here. They want to divide off an acre in order to build a house. And that's why they'd like to separate 1 acre off, have it zoned R1 so that they can build a house on it and meet our zoning ordinance.
For a family member, isn't that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Any questions?
And again, this did go to the planning and had a favorable recommendation.
Thank you for that. Ordinance 274-2023-11 to amend zoning resolution of Trousdale Campgrounds. Mr. Thomas, would you bring us up to speed on that one?
Yes, sir. So
You got 11, we got 12.
I'm sorry.
No, there is no 11 in fact.
I'm sorry, that's a misnumber.
So 11 and 12 are the same thing. One is for the Trousdale, one is for the Hartsville.
It should read 274-2023-11. I'm sorry, I'll correct that for the second reading.
That will be corrected for second reading.
So with this, all we're doing is removing the word exclusively out of both of them. Right now with the campgrounds, the way it's written, all commercial establishments are only supposed to be servicing exclusively, as it now reads, the people there at the campground. So as for instance, we've got Pine Cove Restaurant right now. A lot of people have been eating down there, enjoy it, good restaurant. If it only had the residents of the campground, there's no way it could survive. There's not enough people, the campground's not large enough, so we would lose another business. We looked at that and there is actually another campground that's come before BZA wanting to get started up. We were looking at that. Sumner County has this, it's had this for the longest time, where you can come into a campground area or a marina and eat at the restaurant and, spend your tax dollars in Sumner County. We just like to make it where it was now legal for you to do that here in Trousdale County. But all it is removing the word exclusively. That is it, not changing anything else.
Any questions?
So basically, everybody that's been eating there has been eating there illegally?
Well, they've not been eating there illegally, he's been serving them there illegally.
Don't go on the rest.
Or they were both functioning illegally? Server and the server,
Against codes and zoning anyway.
okay, any questions? All right, moving to budget amendments, under county general. Do we want to take this, finance committee, you want to take these one at a time? Or you want me to just go down the list? For the redundant phone service, server is, we ran into, I'm sorry.
I was gonna mention they were all approved in the budget. They
Right.
All came with favorable recommendations tonight.
Do we need to make any discussion tonight? I think not, unless anyone has particular questions. They were all approved by Budget and Finance tonight. Under overtime under the ambulance service. Mr. Gully, would you mind addressing that?
I don't mind at all. There's a piece that we discussed heavily. Currently. Your EMS. If everyone knows, just get your ideas around that piece. EMS. Works on approximately 56 hours of overtime per month. In their budget already, so that's already budgeted, expected because of the way their shifts lay out. They have 120 biweekly pay, hourly pay period, and they have a 96 biweekly pay period in that regular month. At this current time, as of the 58% of the budget year, that line item is over 80% spent. So there is a considerable amount of overtime already that has taken place. What we're saying, it should be around 58%. It's setting above 80%. Something that budget looked at heavily. It has been addressed that Mr. Beatty is aware that there is an issue. And that they're starting to get a plan of how to correct this issue. Folks, as it seems, I'll be straight, I don't like the hours, the dollar amount we're talking about here. It doesn't sit well with me. It does though say that our members of the public have been served by a entity that we are suing to pay. EMS is under the county, and what they've done is made do with what they've had. It's pretty much how we look at this point. Hopefully there are some options to how we can move forward and not continue to see such large amounts. There's always going to be overtime in the EMS, is what I'm saying, but there's a large amount of extra overtime at this point in the EMS. That it appears we're starting to see some idea of how to correct that. Possibly some PRN conversations have come to place. Whereas if you think about PRN, we may pay that individual, let's say, EMS, a worker, a paramedic may make $30 an hour, on their overtime pay. Well, if we PRN that individual, we're not paying benefits on that individual, plus we can save the county quite a bit of money along the way. There's some options to look at, what I'm trying to say. It was heavily discussed, but yet it is a funding area of the county. We have a problem that needs to be addressed, is what we see. It is a number that doesn't sit well with me. Budget would certainly have been around that number.
Any questions?
Question for Mr. Goldie, that did you say the reason for this, is it a staffing issue or just we're shorthanded and we're having people having to fill holes, or did he indicate a reason why there's all this extra overtime?
I have not seen a true reason on that part. We are seeing some individuals that work multiple shifts of lengthy time there because there was a lack of employees in what stated. There was some shifts that weren't being covered. Mayor Paul may have more answers. I know he's met with some EMS individuals. He mentioned during the budget that he had 2 individuals of the paramedic side of this come to meet with him last week to try to get an eye on what was going on here.
I can address that. As y'all know, I see a lot of timesheets and have to approve a lot of biweekly salaries. When I first began to notice excessive overtime, I noticed that, and this was 2 or 3 months ago, we had one paramedic that worked 8 24-hour shifts in a row. I'll give you a minute to let that sink in. 8 24-hour shifts in a row. That has improved a little bit, but it's still consistently 4 to 5, which brings up 2 or 3 concerns. One is the health of the individual. Number 2 is the exposure of the county, plus excessive spending. So in discussing this on a number of occasions with Mr. Beatty, he suggested that the 2 paramedics who accumulated most of this overtime come to me, which I thought was unusual, but they came to me individually. The first one who came in, to be honest, I was gravely concerned about his health, about the look in his eyes, his body language. This guy was pretty well spent. And so that was my first concern. In just looking at the numbers, my concern was excessive overtime, but after I had a discussion with these 2 gentlemen, each at different times, I realized that instead of really creating this, what I would call a sweet spot, where they were giving themselves all this overtime, what was happening was being very conscientious in their jobs. They were just trying to cover all the shifts. And both of them expressed to me a desire that they didn't work as much as they were working. And so I've talked to Mr. Beatty extensively about this and talked about PRN and how we can solve this problem in the short term. One of the challenges we have, as expressed to me, is our benefits package is maybe not as well as adjoining counties, but our pay is pretty close to the same. And so we're addressing this now, but PRN is going to be the short-term solution. I'm not sure what the long-term solution is going to be, but PRN is the short-term solution. Any questions?
So I know in emergency services, we've been looking at this for at least the last 3 meetings, if not 4 meetings. My concern originally was same as yours, Mr. McCall, just the money side of it. I mean, when you've got paramedics making 3 times their salary yearly in 6 months, just financially, that's an issue. But then you look at it from the personnel. I mean, our greatest asset in this county is our people. And for a department who's constantly coming to us, giving us financial reasons why they can't get anyone to come in, and then working their people on that type of shift. I mean, just doing 2 24s is one thing. Doing 3 makes it a little bit of a push. But you're doing 5 to 8, 24 hours. You're not leaving that place and going to sleep in your own bed for a week. That takes a toll on a person. Mr. Crook might be able to speak to it even better than any of us, just in his position. At what point should this have been addressed much sooner and with a little more effort on the director's part? I mean, I think we need to be looking at that side of this too. Is there a mismanagement component to this?
Anyone else want to speak to this? I think we're moving in the right direction on it.
I think we're already in a situation where emergency services in this county is already in kind of a bad spot, especially with the fire department and everything else, what's going down with that. Probably not gonna be the best thing right now to put the point and finger of blame on Beatty. I mean, people has to want to work in Travis County. There's not a line of people waiting to work here. There's reasons for that. Some of it's pay, some of it's not. As far as staying there on the shifts they work on, from what I understand, there was a 12-hour period yesterday where they only had 1 call. I mean, the place they stay at is basically just like a house. And they've gotten used to it because it's been the same ones for years now. I think PRN is where we need to go. I just wouldn't put Beatty out there as the man that's He's doing a lot. He is. And then on the fire side, I know this ain't on the agenda. But a lot of the issues with the fire department, of course, Jay stepped down. I wasn't at the meeting, but I heard about it. Things like that basically got caused from 2 years ago with another fire chief that was put in here that got ramrodded out here. Now, I know that ain't on the agenda, but when we start pointing fingers at people and we start saying, well, it's probably going to be your fault, the reason why this is like this, we're going to be in a mess. When people say, you know what, I can go somewhere else. I think we need to just address it step by step. So.
Your point is well taken. It's interesting, when I met with these two paramedics, so actually there were three main ones, and one is left for family reasons, and he was very careful not to say anything negative about Mr. Beatty. The other two said they work here because it's a great place, it's a great county, it's a great culture. One comes from DeKalb County, and one comes from Westmoreland. It's not local guys that work here, and they work here because they say our county still has a warm rural feeling to it. So I do think we have what's needed to attract some people. I think maybe we've gotten comfortable with the staff we have there, and at some point neglected to be more aggressive in attracting people. But I'm like you.
It's hard for new people to come and join a bunch of old dogs. I mean, you know what I mean? Like when you got your group together that you've been together with for years, and then new people come in, they don't feel like they're welcome.
Yeah.
So when they get certified, they go somewhere else.
And there
You know,
comes
that's-
that big word, CHANGE, change. It's once you create a culture.
It's like that in every department.
Yeah.
So,
Any other questions on this? Yes.
So, do we know whether or not Beatty ever works on the truck or any of them work on the? I know Mark's no longer there
I can't answer that.
to kind of cover down, just like say working in a hospital. If we're short staffed, our heads will come down and come some more, and that makes a huge difference. In not only morale, but also work.
That's a great point, but I can't answer that at this point.
I don't know the answer. I don't know if you're.
I had, when I became mayor, when I was running for mayor, you hear all these things about what you should do and what you shouldn't do, who you should let go, who you should keep. And I chose to spend a lengthy amount of time looking into situations and peeling back the layers of the onion. And so I will have been mayor here in 4 or 5 or 6 days, 6 months, and I've taken my time to really study all these situations and evaluate. And my attitude from the very beginning is to do what's best for the most. And so I haven't been on a hair trigger, and I haven't made any quick rash decisions, and I won't. But I think it's very important that we make informed decisions that are best for the most. And so we'll keep moving forward and hopefully find some solutions to these things.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would like a moment just to clarify. I don't want anything heard that wasn't said. I was merely asking the question, and I believe it is at this point needs to be asked. At what point do we start looking, is it a mismanagement issue? Because we gotta know where to address it.
Understand.
That's all I'm saying.
Understand. Any other questions, comments? We will address notaries. If everyone's fine with the budget amendments, all have been approved by the Budget and Finance. We'll address notaries at the commission meeting, and now we're up to other business. Commissioner Gregory.
I'm gonna ask that we add one more resolution to the agenda next Monday night. Everyone should, I should have given everyone a copy of it.
I didn't get a copy.
I didn't have the number when I wrote it, which why I had X in there. I think based off what we had, I guess it'd be 07-776.
Do you have an extra copy? I don't know.
Yes, sir, I'm sorry. Basically, the resolution is basically asking, saying that we support the newer color ambulance. But you know, it's kind of been kind of a growing thing on social media the past few days that apparently there were, don't know how many complaints there were, about the new supposed to be purple ambulance. I think it actually came out more of a black color. And I know Mr. Beatty, I think it said it came out darker than intended. But there's an online petition. Now, I checked this a little bit ago with over 300 signatures of people in the community saying, we like it. And my resolution is basically just say that we like the new color, we want to keep it.
Are you asking for an amendment to the agenda?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Commissioner Gregory, will you go up here and take my place as Chairman Pro Tem and let me address this issue? As mayor? As I informed you before, a lot of things come before my desk, across my desk that I sign. That's one of the surprises of being mayor. You never will get one of these in politics. An invoice came across my desk, I don't know, a month or two ago, asking for $5,000 to change the color scheme on one of our ambulances. I thought it was kind of pricey myself, but if you look on the third page, what we get handed down from the state, and this is what it says. Ambulance is placed in permitted service after the effective deadline of this rule and have a design plan is filed with the division office shall conform to the services adopted color and marking plan. If the color or marking scheme is subsequently modified, a revised description and photographs shall be filed with the ambulance service for the division office, and all ambulances within the service shall be modified within 1 year after adoption of the revised color and markings. Now, read this next line. Upon the effective date of this rule, ambulance services shall ensure that white vehicles with an orange stripe may continue in service until replaced or withdrawn from service, which means our white ambulance could remain in service without us spending $5,000. We have another ambulance in production now, and we don't know what color it's going to be. So I want you to look at what this is. A current ambulance. The original color scheme that was approved by the state is on the second page. Okay, when it arrived, it was the one on the first page. My personal opinion is that it should have been sent back because the company that created it didn't go with the original color scheme. This was the original color scheme that was approved by the state. Everyone with me? So when I saw the invoice, I didn't sign it because I didn't think it was a good thing to spend $5,000 on an ambulance that doesn't have to be. The color scheme doesn't have to be done. I talked with this on a couple of occasions with Mr. Beatty, and the last conversation we had as he left my office was, Mr. Mayor, it's your ambulance. You do what you want to with it. I assumed at that point that we would not change the color scheme. I contacted the state and explained the situation to them, and the person who makes the final decision sent me an email that said, Mr. McCall, you can go back to the original color scheme if that's your choice. Now, about an hour after Mr. Beatty left my office, this thing hits Facebook. I have yet to find out who decided to take it upon themselves to challenge my decision. But here is my decision. I think it should be the EMS committee, or not the EMS committee. I think it should be the Emergency Services Committee to make this decision. If I'm not going to make the decision, to be honest with you, my heart's not set on any particular color. I was just trying to make the best decision for spending the county's money. I would much rather lose a battle and win the war than win a battle and lose it. So if this commission chooses to say, well, I like black an ambulance, that's what all the rest of them are gonna look like to come out of production, unless the company, and I have not been able to get a straight answer on whether or not the next one that comes out is gonna be gray or black. I don't know. But if it comes out gray, you'll have to spend $5,000 to match them. And that's just my, yes, sir.
This did come out of a complaint, correct? Was this a complaint that got brought to your attention?
Yep.
So that was false. That was,
There was no complaint brought by my attention. I will say this, that when I was running, I try to listen to what the people say. And when I was running for mayor, I was constantly asked, why do we do this color scheme for them? Now, I'm not gonna go on Facebook and have a survey. I choose not to. But there were enough people who pointed out to me that I considered that when the opportunity came up, well, what do we do? Personally, I really like the gray one. Okay. I wish it'd come out that way, but it didn't. It ended up being black. So that's my take on the measure, whatever the court decides to do, it's fine with me. Or whatever the emergency services committee decides to do. I will tell you, since the EMS director answers to me, I could demand that it be the way that I want it, but I'm kind of a big boy, so I can work with you. Any questions?
I don't have a question, but I would say I think we should ensure that this second one that's coming out is whatever color, so we don't have to pay enough about
I
those.
would think so.
And that should be insured before it happens.
Mr. Gully?
So as the ambulance that we currently have, they're approved by the state?
With the black one?
Yes,
Yes.
it has been approved as
Well, actually, the original one was approved. I don't know if the second one was. Can't say.
but when it comes down to it, this is Trousdale County ambulance.
Yeah.
It's what's best for Trousdale County, correct? Not the state of Tennessee.
And let me say this, in defense of my commission, okay? This is a matter that should have been settled either in my office or with the emergency services committee. The line in the resolution that says, since this is county funded, we should have the authority to decide. The county funds uniform for EMS. If someone doesn't like the style of the uniform, is it gonna be brought to this commission to decide? I'm not into micromanagement. A lot of those decisions need to be made on a committee level and the court not be saddled with issues like what color is the ambulance got. That again, that's just my opinion.
I agree with your opinion.
Well, and I realize that, of course, a resolution has no force of law. It's simply stating our opinion. But like I said, and if the opinion of the majority is no, then, that's fine. I'll certainly will go by that. I like it. I think it looks good. I think it makes it stand out, and I would just like us to weigh in one way or the other. So like I said, I'm gonna ask that we add to the agenda Monday night.
What's the will of the body?
What's the will of the
Can we
body?
vote not to
You
bring
can't
it
vote
up,
after
just to let it
Oh,
go?
okay.
You can't.
Just
Maybe just a show of hands, maybe.
So that's been brought up Monday.
Your vote would be on that.
Any further discussion on this? I'd just like to know, what is the emergency services committee discussed this, or?
With the upheaval and the drama that's been going on in the fire department, I think we sort of touched on it. The mayor talked about it at the last meeting. We have a meeting scheduled for, I believe it's the 8th. Is that right? And I'm happy to discuss it then, if that's what this body wants, we can discuss it, and come back with a recommendation. I myself believe that it is the mayor's job to make this decision, and the commission has no say in this. That is my opinion.
Any else, Mr. Thomas?
So we are not, so the state hasn't complaining at all about the difference between what we submitted and what we actually have on the street. Correct?
Always complain to me.
So when you look at the two, between the black with gray on the hood, which is even darker gray than what's in the picture here. The two, what was submitted for approval by the state and what we actually have aren't even the same, color scheme. I mean, other than one, both have purple on them.
As I understand.
So at this point, no matter what we do, unless we go back to doing orange with white, we're gonna have to pay $5,000 to paint one of them to match the other.
If the other one comes out differently, that's correct. I'm still trying to find out who I need to call, who's building this ambulance to find out what color it's going to be. Because the gray was turned in and they got the black, okay? Again,
Same company building, the new one built the other one,
can't tell you, don't know.
you know what you're gonna do.
Possibly.
Any other discussion?
I mean, can we get the will of the body?
Well, show of hands, maybe. We can.
It's a discussion of the workshops. It's not a vote, not item for vote.
What do you say, Council?
It's a discussion item, not a.
Okay. Discussion item.
Is this going to the emergency services committee?
Yes, I will put it on the agenda.
But it's gonna come in front of us before it gets to them. I mean, for Monday night, I mean, the resolution on what he's trying to
So
do.
we can't just decide not to take it up.
We can't Monday night.
We can't Monday night.
Does the agenda, do we vote to amend the agenda Monday night?
Yes.
Okay, in order to do this.
Yes.
Great, understood. All right.
But Ford,
Where is, who is building this new building?
Can't tell you that.
You don't know,
I don't.
but you know we got one on
If you'll notice in the ARP funds, 360,000 of ARP funds was designated by a new ambulance.
What I was going to suggest is make a picture of this one and send it to them, if that's what you want, say $5,000.
Consider it better look like that. if they-
So, I agree that we should leave it up. And everything you just said, to leave it up to the, to that department. So should our, like that committee bring it up, like we're trying to make a big deal of it, or should it just be dropped? Let them do their thing.
I would like for it to be something to do myself.
Okay.
we'll have to make a decision on the resolution Monday night, either to add it or not. Then if we-
The agenda.
Yes,
As far as this resolution goes, I'd like to thank Mr. Gregory for bringing this a week before the meeting instead of 10 minutes before the meeting. I really hope that becomes more of a consensus when it comes to adding to the agendas, so that we all have a fair amount of time to look at it. Thank you, Mr. Gregory.
That's the reason I brought it tonight. For that very purpose. So,
Would you like to ask for public comment or you?
is any public comments in regards to this subject
Any others?
or any other? We got several here in the public too now. Mr. Ford got one more.
But Mr. Beatty, would he not know who's making
He
it?
would, I'll find out.
If you find that out, then maybe through him, you can send him a picture if you, unless you want to change it. Spend $5,000.
Gotcha. We do have a number of visitors here tonight, and I apologize to you for the length of our meeting, but anyone that would like to address any issue that we've discussed earlier, any resolutions or ordinances in the back? I don't want you to feel like you came and didn't accomplish anything. Okay. I think we're fine. I think we're fine to the petties. Anyone else? Public comment? Yes, sir. Art.
Yeah, I'll just address the, I guess, the resolution without addressing the resolution as, you know, but as we started out, right, our plan, as we started from the very beginning is to be open. We've had a number of public meetings, landowner meetings, informational meetings. We have a lot of information available, so far and, continue to meet with people. We had a meeting with, in the community here, the mayor the mayor called, and continue to move forward with our actions of being open about the process and engaging with people in the process. So I do appreciate anybody that gives feedback on this process. It is not totally in our hands, right? There is a federal energy regulatory commission process that's all part of this whole thing. We have not, we're in pre-file right now. We have not filed officially with them. There will be another scoping meeting with the FERC. There will be more opportunities for public comment on the record. It's still open right now. You can make public comments on the record. But we are trying to be open, and so that's why we asked about having a work session, informational session, in which we can further give information. It does take a long time to process all the environmental survey data, all the other information that we have, including our ability to work and figure out how, if we could even get land from TBA at this point. Both TBA and Enbridge are not like a small town business where you could do a land swap or purchase land from, get land from TBA would require an act of Congress. We could do some sort of lease thing. We looked into that. But it's not as easy as just like, hey, it's on your property. We're going to provide gas to you. You can't just put our property on theirs. It doesn't work that way. All the rest of that we would love to explain to you. We have some drawings. We have a plan moving forward. We'd love to get some input in this. We are still a year plus away from any type of filing or any sort of official planning and zoning types of things, because building permits are usually about a year out, and we would be looking at the best case for construction until 2025 in the fall. We don't even know if TBA is going to 100% build gas yet, right? So it's still a work in progress, and that's why we haven't filed. We're still waiting for them to have their draft EIS and the NEPA process that they're going through. So I appreciate that you guys have concerns, and we'd love to answer those concerns without having to go through a formal resolution process. But we can't, I mean, whatever you guys want to do is what you want to do. We'd love to be able to continue to work with the community as we've done since the very beginning of this process. Maybe some of you aren't the commissioners that we met with or the mayor that we met with the first time, but we started back in 2021 when we first started this whole thing, and we've met with a number of people over and over again, trying to ensure that we're part of the community and that we understand what's important. So that's all I have to say. Whatever, we'll be there Monday if anybody has any questions then, but we'd love to have everybody show up on the 7th, and we'll bring more of a team and have information that we can talk about.
Thank you. One other piece of business, the brush truck. If anyone's concerned about the brush truck, we're still in the process of having it evaluated and getting estimates, and that's going to take probably another week or so before we give an answer to whether or not we end up buying a new one. For those of you who don't know, that on its first outing, our brush truck had a wreck or was wrecked, and we have offers to allow us to purchase a new one. We have offers from an insurance company, and we're evaluating that to see if it will cover the damages and if we'll have a normal truck when the damages are covered. So we'll keep you posted on that. Any other business this time? Not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second, this motion is not debatable. All in favor, say aye. Thank you.